Hi there, and welcome to the fifth episode of Career Stories Live. So I'm really pleased today to have Mark Deeks join me. So hi, Mark.
Hi, Sarah. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Are you?
Yeah, a bit cold up here in the northeast, but yeah, can't complain.
Yeah, it's pretty chilly in Cornwall as well. So anyone that's watching, please do comment to let us know that you're here, where you're from, and feel free to ask any questions or share your experience in the comments. So I came across Mark by accident probably a couple of years ago now, actually. I was in the car actually scrolling through LinkedIn, and we ended up having this DM conversation about his career in music, his PhD, my son's aspiring music career, and then I signed up for his piano course. So that's kind of how Mark and I met, and the basis for these lives really. So as I said, it's career stories, and really I wanted to talk to people about what it is they do, why they do it, etc. So that's that. I could just see we've got a comment coming in. So Mark here. So hi Mark, nice to see you. And John, lovely to see you both. Cheers to each of you today for your messages. Oh, cool. Thanks, John. Okay, so my aim really is just to inspire a bit of thought for people that are thinking about their careers. So I'm going to put up my first question now. So Mark, when I filled out the form to ask you a bit about what you do, so you said music teacher, author, rock star, and I know you said don't put the rock star part, but there you go, I did. So do you want to just tell us a bit about why and how you decided to work in music full time?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know how to do anything else. I've been a musician all my life. I started playing piano when I was 5 years old, and now I'm 45, and it just is it's the most automatic thing in the world for me to do. Sometimes when you're having like these deep existential crises about whether you should be doing something else with your life, you sort of come back to the fact, well, this is really what I know how to do. I mean, I love football and could write about football till the cows come home, but I don't think I've really got the stomach for starting a career from scratch at this point. So yeah, music and me just go hand in hand, I think.
Okay, excellent. So you said you've kind of got musician, teacher, author, rock star, and we've just talked briefly before we came on about you've kind of done your career in reverse. So you started off in teaching. So why did you decide to leave teaching? I guess is a good starting point.
Yeah, I sometimes use that expression about doing a musician's career in reverse. So the kind of traditional model that a lot of musicians follow is when they're young, they pick up guitars or instruments or whatever, and they want to be in a band and they want to try and be, famous, whatever that means, and have people know your music across the world, and they start realizing after a few years that either this is going to work or it's not, and they'll take sort of any normal job in inverted commas whilst they try to make their music known or popular or whatever form that might be, and then they either get a little bit of success and keep going, or they find it really hard, realize they can't make any money, decide suck it in, and then get a proper job, as your mum would say.
Proper job, yeah.
And so then a lot of musicians will become a teacher of some description. So that could be, a music teacher in a classroom of, a school of any age, or it could be instrumental teaching, teaching other people privately or whatever form that might be. And then that's what most musicians will do for life, become instrumental teachers or music teachers, gig a bit on the side if they so desire, make a bit of extra cash. And I kind of did that in reverse. So I was a teacher by the time I was 20. I got offered a teaching job just before I finished uni, did peripatetic music teaching, and then which are the teachers that go around the different schools, teaching people how to play the piano. In fact, I was teaching piano privately when I was 15.
Wow.
So even before I'd gone to college. So, and then fast forward a few years, sort of became a college music lecturer and did that for 8 to 9 years, so the 16 to 19 sector. And I really, really loved teaching that age range. I always described them as the perfect sort of halfway point between school children and university students. And in that they were old enough to understand that you were taking the mick out of them, but not old enough to do anything about it. So I kind of liked having the banter with the 16 to 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
I did that for 8 or 9 years. But like, I think we hear a lot of stories, people falling not out of love with the act of teaching, because I don't think you ever fall out of love with the act of teaching, but you fall out of love with the education industry. When just how driven by data and statistics and spreadsheets and quality it is when, in my personal opinion, it should be about teaching. And
Yeah.
so when you're running a college music department and realizing that you're spending more of your time fending off nonsense, as we used to call it, than actually teaching kids how to play music, then I started to really lose the stomach for it.
Yeah.
And so after 8 or 9 years, I basically sort of decided that if I was going to get out, I needed to make sure there was enough, pro musician work out there. And I sort of made a bet with myself, if I could get within $5,000 of my teaching salary, it would be a price worth paying to get out.
Okay.
So for a year, I was working as a lecturer and doing absolutely every piece of music work I could lay my hands on, sort of doing 2 full-time jobs almost, and got within $5,000 and said, right, sod it, I'm off. So that was 10 and a half years ago. I mean, fully self-employed. And so then talk about sort of doing it in reverses. I've since joined a reasonably well-known band, and I've got my solo project signed as well. So I'm now sat here with 2 record deals in my mid-40s.
Awesome.
And I guess I've now got more record deals than I probably would have ever had in my 20s had I done it the other way around. So yeah, life's sort of worked in reverse for me in that way.
That's really cool. We'll talk about that in a second. So we've got a couple of questions coming up. So Mark Crawley is saying, what team, Mark? So I guess he's going back to football.
Oh, my football team is Newcastle United, and always shall be, because I'm black and white through and through.
Okay, very good. And then Jeff is saying, Mark, do you cover tunes or do you create your own music?
So both. So in a lot of my piano work, I do a lot of sort of cover versions and teach people how to play cover versions of a lot of pop stuff. And then in terms of original music, I'm in 2 bands. One's called Winter Filleth and one's called Arth. And so creating original music as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Thanks for the question, Jeff. Jeff's on next week, actually. And Paul is saying, it's a tough environment, Mark. I've seen that in my work as a school governor.
Yeah, it's a pressured environment. I was saying to you just before we came on air, I heard a statistic yesterday that said more than 30% of teachers in the UK who have qualified as a teacher within the last 10 years now no longer work as a teacher.
Wow.
Which is huge.
It's a big start.
Yeah.
Okay, so we sort of touched on this really, but have you ever found that it's hard when your passion is also your work, so you kind of don't get any downtime from it? And I'm thinking when I decided that I was going to be a running coach, and I'm qualified to do that now, but actually I found it was quite annoying in the end because I was always running with people that were, I don't know, slower or not doing the kind of run that I want to do, so I couldn't actually run for myself anymore. So I found that quite tough. Have you ever had anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, music is absolutely all-encompassing. It's one of those sort of industries that when you're in it entirely. So yeah, music is in my head and in my house from morning to night. And so yeah, it's very difficult to sometimes switch off because the things that I want to do to switch off, 8 out of 10 of them involve music. So yeah, it's very difficult to even listen to music that I enjoy and not sort of analyze it or work out how I would arrange it or teach it or translate it for choir or whatever, because I do a lot of choir work. So it's very, very difficult to switch that off. But as I said at the beginning, like, what else am I going to do? This is what I do. Yeah,
it's that always be working thing, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So Jeff's got another question. So are you on Patreon? Have you heard of it?
So I have heard of Patreon, but no, I'm not on it. So that's where sort of artists will commonly almost have, I don't want to use the expression fundraisers, but will sort of give access to themselves behind the scenes footage and give extras and for subscriptions. Yeah. I'm not on Patreon. I know 1 or 2 other musicians who are. It's not something I've ever explored, to be honest. But in terms of sort of funding the albums that I do, both my bands are on quite well-known metal labels, so we don't need to do that too much. But it might be an interesting thought as a soloist, maybe to explore. So yeah, thanks, Jeff.
Excellent, thank you. So do you want to just talk a little bit more about your work as a recording artist? So how did you go about it? How did you find a record deal? How are you? I know that you've done a couple of bigger gigs. How did you arrange all of that kind of stuff?
So I joined in the sort of mid 2010s, if that's the correct expression. 2010. I was doing my PhD in around 2010 to 2015 kind of time. And my PhD was in national identity in Northern and Eastern European heavy metal. That's my title of my PhD.
Okay.
A PhD in heavy metal, for want of a better expression. And, people laugh at that, and that's fine. And I was interviewed. The whole concept of the PhD was about musicians, how they represent where they're from in their music. So that could be taking old folk songs and using that as the inspiration for songs. It could be taking old poetry or mythology, like Norse mythology or Anglo-Saxon mythology, or various old sort of poetic texts, and using those as the inspiration for lyrics. And it's also the kind of thing where bands will take old paintings of landscapes of where they're from, their region, their country, their city or whatever, and use that on the artwork. And so how musicians will portray their identity of where they're from in their music. And so in the last 40 years or so, in various areas of heavy metal, this has become a huge thing. And it's traceable back to a lot of classical composers, like Wagner used a lot of Norse mythology, and Sibelius, the Finnish composer, wrote a piece called Finlandia, or whatever it might be, and in terms of these examples. And these pieces became synonymous with what it meant to be from that place. And so that's happened a lot in metal. Here we are, sort of hundreds of years later.
Wow.
That was what my PhD was about. And by researching that, I wanted to get in contact with a band called Winter Philith, from an English band, because that's what Winter Philith have always done. And at the time, they had 3 albums out, based around the Manchester area. And so I contacted them, got to know Chris, the singer who writes most of the lyrics. And they asked me to go in the studio with them because they knew that I did a lot of choral work, a lot of choir leading and arranging, and they wanted help with their vocal harmonies. So they asked me to go in the studio to work on the 4th album, and we got on so well, I joined the band. So
Amazing.
Here we are now, having released 8 albums, and we're best friends, and we've been together ever since, kind of thing.
That's cool. So yeah, it's networking, I guess, isn't it? So like in most things, so kind of getting in touch with those people that you want to aspire to be with, and making the effort
about their work, yeah. And then next thing here we are. So that was in 2014, and then last year, the end of 2021, beginning of 2022, I have my solo project Arth, which is an old Northumbrian word that means my native land. Again, this concept representing in your music.
Yeah.
I was writing, I'd come up with this stuff. Essentially what I was doing, Sarah, is I decided that I'd spent my entire life making music for other people's specifications, and I finally wanted to do something for myself.
Yeah.
My wife's like, you really should just write an album, and just it didn't matter whether anyone else liked it. So I really approached it in a very, very selfish way.
Mm-hmm.
The Arth album became a doom metal album with loads of pianos and cellos and choirs on it, that I did 3/4 of myself. It's the story of St. Cuthbert from Holy Island in Northumberland, and the journey of his remains to what is now Durham Cathedral. It was a journey that took over 100 years, as his remains were carried around the northeast. So it's just a stupid niche idea of a niche about a dead Northumbrian saint set to metal. And so I made this album with no idea of whether anyone else would ever hear it. But I started approaching some record labels when it was done, and had 3 offers within a fortnight, and picked one and got assigned to one of my favorite record labels, Prophecy Productions in Germany, and got a 5-album deal to do that. So I've got to write some more now. So that's
amazing.
What I'm doing right now.
Oh, cool. And so have you got a similar creative process? Have you got another idea in mind to do something similar, or are you going to go totally different way?
Yeah, it'll always be about Northumbria. That's the whole concept.
Yeah.
Historical tale from Northumbria, and there's lots we can explore, about different kings and different how Northumbria was formed from different regions, because Northumbria used to be a real powerhouse in the Anglo-Saxon areas. It was the big one of the biggest controlling regions, spreading from what is now the south of Scotland all the way down to the Humber. There's lots of stories to be told. So yeah, I reckon I can squeeze 5 records out of it.
So Paul's saying 5 albums as well, and then he's also put a link here to I'm guessing your album, so for Jeff there on your Spotify link. So thank you, Paul. That's cool. I've never been up to Northumbria. I'd really like to. I've just been reading quite a lot of the DCI Ryan series, which are set in that area. It sounds lovely, the countryside that is described in those books. So definitely on the list. I suppose it sort of goes a little bit back to your football as well, doesn't it? Kind of tribal sense of belonging, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things I've always liked about sport of any kind. That kind of sense of community and sense of a sort of shared dream or a shared goal or a shared passion.
Yeah.
And people from the northeast have always had a sort of reputation for being very sort of passionate about where we're from and very, very warm in that way. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think that's it's a strange line that you have to walk, because of course the concept of identity for some people becomes a real problematic subject, because of course when it's taken too far it becomes racism. But there's that sort of line between a pride of a history and a pride of a story of where you're from, and of course something which it's very much not. In fact, one of the curious things about the whole art project is I've had messages from fans and people and journalists and whatever across the world saying things like, well, I've had both extremes. I've had someone asking me if I was a Catholic,
right,
and people who are religious people who've listened to the album and appreciated the fact that it's a tale of St. Cuthbert. And I've also had people saying they're concerned that I'm racist, which of course I'm not.
Right, okay.
It's really interesting how the
interpretation,
same could be interpreted in both ways when it's neither.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting concept of identity. That's probably a subject for another day.
Yeah, definitely. I've got so many questions coming into my head, but I guess I'm just thinking now, like recording deals. So you said you've got 3. So how do you even go about looking for a label? And does that come back to people that you like, or I guess you've got contacts?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the guys from my band Winterfell were so very helpful in that point and sort of put me in the direction of other artists, other labels, and just reaching out to labels that you appreciate, who've got other music on that you enjoy. I think that certainly in the metal world, it's quite whilst it's a huge industry, it's quite small in a lot of ways. It's a sort of neat, and so there's a sense of openness, I guess, in a lot of labels where they just don't mind receiving inquiries, or submissions. But it very much speeds up the process if you know someone who knows someone.
Yeah, definitely.
I guess that's kind of why it took me so long. You can't always culture those or gain those relationships quickly.
Yeah. No, that's good. And a totally random question, but does LinkedIn help with this kind of stuff? Are there many people in your field that would be on LinkedIn to help build up relationships?
I don't think there are a lot of metalers on LinkedIn in terms of like the sort of labels and the sort of industry side of it. There are metal groups on LinkedIn, of sort of fans, for want of a better word. I'm in one of them. I'm not sure how great high value it is, but yeah, it's curious because it's such a huge part of my personality. I've sort of given up trying to hide it. I could sort of come on these podcasts dressed up in a shirt and stuff, but here I am sat in a Morbid Angel t-shirt because I like Morbid Angel. So there, I did a TEDx workshop a few weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
Where we made sort of the part of the blurb about how I'd done all these different things whilst wearing metal t-shirts, because I wear metal t-shirts every single day of my life since I was about 15. So
yeah,
I think it's important, whatever career or industry you're in, to not be afraid to be yourself. How many times we get kind of instruction and the discussions around tattoos or piercings or dyeing your hair or shaving your head.
Exactly. Yeah.
Being able to, I guess, as you get a bit older, you sort of realize that this is who I am.
Yeah, who cares? Yeah, even with the dyed hair. So I'd always wanted to do pink hair, but it took COVID for me to do that because I was thinking, I might not get clients. But now I'm like, well, if they don't like pink hair, then I don't work for them, do I? So
yeah, exactly.
That's cool. So your hashtag, That Piano Guy, do you want to just talk a bit about that, what that is?
Yeah, so it's just a way for people to find me across social media. It's got I think not everyone on LinkedIn knows that you can click and follow hashtags.
Yeah.
So you can click a hashtag and follow it, and That Piano Guy's got a little following. I'm always going to be a niche on LinkedIn because, let's face it, most people are here to teach other people how to use LinkedIn. But if people want piano in their feed, then that's a simple way for people to find me, and it just means people don't have to remember my name. I guess I've kind of always had a slight advantage in that my name is a little unusual. There aren't many Deekses around.
Yeah.
But it just makes it a bit easier to be That Piano Guy. But sadly, there is lots of people will get it wrong. So lots of people will say The Piano Man or That Piano Man or some permutation of that. And there's an American piano teacher who is The Piano I think he's the piano guy, or I forgot which permutation it is now. But
something, yeah.
he's also bald and also has facial hair. So I quite often get people going, "Oh, I've seen your adverts on Facebook." I'm like, "No, you haven't."
No.
So perhaps it's a real branding fail. I don't know.
Yeah. So do you want to just talk a bit about what you do in terms of piano and what your offering is?
Yeah, absolutely. So even before the pandemic, I did all of my teaching online. I kind of fell out of love with one-to-one teaching a little bit in terms of going to people's houses, because, like I say, I was doing that when I was 15, so it's been a long. And so there's a kind of a big argument in piano teaching about whether in person or online is better, and a lot of people think, or the main argument for working better in person is, if you sit next to the person, you get a much better view of their hands. And I think that's nonsense. And so the way that I prove it is that I do this. So this is my camera setup of my hands, that you can now see both hands. Now, if you were sat next to me in my house, you might get a great view of this right hand, but you wouldn't get a great view of that, because it'd be over there, or vice versa. Whereas this camera is in a direct straight line down the middle, so you can see a great, exactly even view of both hands. And it means I can also set this thing up where if I press a key, the key above it lights up. And of course, by doing it virtually, it's all recorded. So now you've got a library of everything I teach you. And whether you do one of my pre-recorded courses like you did, or whether people work with me one-to-one, they have something they can refer back to, pause, rewind, and so on. None of which you could do with an in-person. So I know that there will be a feeling for some people that they prefer in person. I understand that. I don't think it's as cut and dry as people make out. No. And so I do pre-recorded courses or live one-to-one work, and it's all online, which means, of course, anyone from anywhere in the world can work with me. They just need to be one of those people who stands at parties and says, "Yeah, I've always wanted to play piano," but then they just dribble off some nonsense which isn't true about their fingers being too short or something.
Or haven't got time.
Oh well, yeah, the age-old argument about time, which is why mantra is 15 minutes a day, as you well know.
No, I really did enjoy it when I did it, and would like to do more at some point. But so Jeff's just saying that he's found you. Mark is saying, is Deeks a Northumbrian name?
No, it's not.
No,
it's a southern name. I understand that there are some hills around Southampton or something called the Dykes.
Oh, okay.
That's a suggestion that it might have come from there, but my family originally came from London.
Oh, okay.
And useless story, because lots of people bring this to my attention, even though we've known for many years. Barbara Windsor, her real name was Deeks. Her real name was Barbara, and she was from the same part of London as my family was. But
interesting.
Never been able to categorically prove a connection. We just think there were more than one Deeks family in that region. But London, we know there has a history of some Deekses, but not a Northumbrian name.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for the questions to Paul and Jeff. So we talked very briefly about this before as well. So I've said most of people I've had on so far have talked something about values, and you have actually referenced values just now. But so do your personal values have any impact on the type of work you take on, or the clients that you'll work with, or anything like that?
Yeah, when you mentioned this question, I was like, I find it very difficult to think in terms of personal values. My personal values are just please be nice to people.
Yeah.
And just do what you say you're going to do. So anyone who wants to work with me, if you send me a message and do what you say you're going to do, then you're my kind of person. I think sometimes we overcomplicate this and we start putting up mood boards and vision boards and start thinking about a word for 2023 and all this. And if that's your bag, then great. But I just don't think like that. I just want people to be straightforward to deal with. So lots of people will send me messages that say things like, the hub will be, I've always wanted to play piano, tell me more. I'm determined to make this happen. And then you respond to them and then they don't reply. That is my life, because piano playing is not a pain point, but it's a passion. And so my personal values are, if you're the kind of person that says something and then doesn't do it, I don't want to know you. And it sounds a bit harsh, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah. Person who does what you say you're going to do for hobby or for business or whatever, then great. You're my kind of person. Just be honest with people and do what you say you're going to do. That's my personal.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so advice. Have you got any advice for people that want to make music part of or all of their career?
Yeah, because I used to, I mentioned when I was a college lecturer, I used to be in charge of the UCAS application process and the tutorials.
Okay.
So we used to talk to the students a lot about this. And there is a misconception that you need to be a qualified on your instrument to teach it, and you just don't. There's no police, there's no authority in that kind of way. It says you have to be a great, grade something guitarist to teach guitar. None of that exists. So the fundamental thing that you need is for the person who wants to be taught by you to believe you are better on the instrument than they are. And as soon as that goes away, then you can't teach them anymore. So there has to be that kind of respect of information flow that you are better than they are. And that might sound stating, but stating the obvious, but it's really true. That's what you need to be able to teach someone an instrument. They have to think that you're better. So you have to be better than they are. So what that leads you to is you just have to be as good at your instrument as you possibly can. And then the other element of it is that some people will tell you that niching down and becoming really superb at jazz piano and nothing but jazz piano will lead you towards a career as a jazz pianist, and it may well. But there's an expression in music called a working musician, and a working musician is someone who makes a living at music, but they may well do it using a number of different strands. So they might accompany a choir, but they might also perform as a soloist, and they might perform as a soloist doing pop and classical and jazz. They might be able to accompany people for exams. They might do some teaching, and they sort of piece together this kind of patchwork of a living. And that's how most musicians will make a living. And so I always said that to the students that you need to be prepared to get yourself a functional level of ability that will allow you to be paid for as many different musical tasks and work in as many different musical settings as possible. Can you arrange a pop song for a choir? Can you play in a band? Can you teach your instrument? Can you play different styles of music? Can you write original music? Can you write music for an advert? Being prepared to turn your hand to as many different musical settings as possible is what will at least get you paying the bills. Then, if you then want to be able to really drill down and become a real authority at one thing, great. But until you can pay the bills, then you're kind of taking a little bit an element of risk, in my opinion. So as a piano player, that's a really useful instrument to be able to do all of these different settings. And some instruments can't have quite as much flexibility as that. But yeah, I always say, be as good at your instrument as you can, but then be able to turn your hand to as many different settings, many different niches of the industry as you can, to at least be able to sort of carve out bill paying, and then sort of reevaluate from there.
Yeah, so it's almost like a generalist stroke specialist type thing. So you generalize in lots of different things, but obviously you've got to have a decent amount of talent and ability.
You're very welcome to enjoy some jobs more than others. I also used to say to students, the electrician who comes to your parents' house to fix the shower might really hate fixing electric showers, but he can do it, and he's been paid, and he's gone home and knocked a mess, and he's done the job. His passion might be installing, electric gateways for drives, but unless he can get, a diary full of electric gateways for drives, then he can't pay the bills. So he has to use his electric skills in a number of different settings until pay the bills, and then he'll go, right, well, actually, what I really have a passion for is this. Let's see if I can build up the stuff that I really love doing. And so, I think that's similar to musicians.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Yeah, I hate writing CVs, but that's one of the things that I get asked to do most often in my job. But there you go.
No, you have to pay the bills, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you do them, and then you phase it out as you can, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that's really good.
I never imagined 3 choirs a week.
Yeah.
I never imagined I'd be a choir master. I have my own choir like I do with Sing United.
Yeah.
But here I am. I got it down from 3 choirs a week to 2 choirs a week.
Yeah.
I might get it down to 1 choir a week sometime, but until I can afford to not do it, I mean, it's not that I enjoy it. I do enjoy it.
Yeah.
But if I had the choice of doing anything in the world, would I do choirs all the time? No, probably not.
No.
But I enjoy it, and one day I might not have to, but we have to keep the roof over our heads, right?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, we are running short on time now. So as I said, there's loads of questions that keep coming into my head. But career highs. So what would you say have been your highs so far?
I played Carnegie Hall with a choir. That was pretty cool.
Mm,
It's the venue that is the joke for a lot of musicians. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. Is the old musician's joke. So yeah, I was lucky enough to play Carnegie Hall when I was on tour with the choir in New York.
very cool.
It was only 15 minutes, but can't take it away
Doesn't
from them.
matter. You were there, yeah.
Got a picture. So that was pretty coul. And then Arth, my solo metal project, we played, and Winterfeld, we both played the Prophecy Fest in Germany at the end of September last year. It's about 1,200 people, and that's in a cave in Germany. And yeah, so playing a metal festival in a cave, which was like live streamed across the world on YouTube and everything. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Well, yeah, that does. I remember reading about that. It did sound pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was great because I got to rock out my guitar for a change.
Yeah. Okay. Career lows. Anything that you want to share?
It's really hard making a living as a musician.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's not pretend this is easy.
Yeah.
2022 was a tough year.
Yeah.
Music is one of these things that's often viewed as a luxury.
Mm.
It's not an essential. And when people haven't got very much money, they look at the luxuries and they go. So yeah, let's not pretend that making a living of this is easy. It's not.
Yeah.
As I say, what else am I going to do? This is what I do.
Yeah. Okay. So last question then. What's next for you in your work?
So in terms of my original music, writing a new Arth album as we speak. That gets recorded. I don't think anyone knows this. I can't tell you, but gets recorded soon. And Winterfeld, we're working on a new album too. And then in terms of business, I'm currently looking more than anything. I said at the start of this year I would give 3 people a discounted rate on my one-to-one teaching to work with me for the next 12 months, and I haven't filled all 3 spaces yet.
Okay.
So if anyone wants to work with me one-to-one for a discounted rate for the next 12 months, but do not send me a message if you don't know to do it.
If you're not sure. And that leads on to my final thing there. So how can people get in touch with you for more information about what you do?
Well, if
So
we're
what's
watching
the best way?
the hashtag That Piano Guy will find me, or Mark Deeks will also find me.
Yeah.
So feel free to connect with me. I'm regularly putting out piano videos and so on here on LinkedIn, because I think that makes me a little bit unusual and stand out a bit. So yeah, feel free to reach out. I'm also on the other channels. Mark Deeks Music is where you will usually find me on different places, but here on LinkedIn, just me, That Piano Guy.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, thank you again, Mark, for coming on today. It's been really interesting. I could have come up with so many more questions, but so thank you to everyone that's been watching, asking questions. I just saw there was another comment from Jeff there. So he's saying he uses the same joke when it comes to being effective on LinkedIn: practice, practice, practice. Yes, thank you, Jeff. Okay, so future shows, I've got guests coming in. As I said, next week Jeff is on, so he is based in Columbus, and he's going to be talking about what he's been doing since he retired from corporate life and why he does what he does. So he basically does loads and loads of LinkedIn training as a kind of a volunteer, really. So it's really interesting what he's got to say. So thanks again, Mark, and I will see everybody next week.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Oh, I've just got a comment coming up. There you go. So Paul's saying, good to see you. Thank you for that, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay. Right, I'm just going to end the broadcast now. So thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.